Welcome to the Human Frame podcast.
With me, Łucja Hawking. Today I am joined by Melanie Spencer. Melanie is a screenwriter, theatre director and filmmaker. Born to Scottish parents, Melanie was raised in the Midlands. She studied at UAE before attending RADA to complete a master's degree. Over a 15-year career, she has worked for Channel 4, ITV, BBC National Theatre, Hampstead Theatre, Radio 4 and many, many more besides. She worked closely with Wellcome Trust for a number of years on ambiguous arts and science research projects, foregoing strong, lasting bonds with scientists, medical doctors and athletes. She was awarded the J.B. Priestley Prize from the Royal Literary Foundation. She loves writing for Scottish Voices and has recently wrapped her latest film, a short starring Daniel Portman of Game of Thrones. Melanie is the founder of Artists Anonymous, making her the artist at large for a number of businesses who recognise that creative thinking is no longer a nice to have. As a hardcore story addict, she also loves coaching people to bring their own wild stories to life by writing them down, which is how she met me.
Thanks so much, Melanie, for joining me today.
Lovely to be here.
I'll start with the first question.
So, what sparked your interest in writing, directing and storytelling in the first place? Because that is where you hold most of your work in.
Yeah, so it's difficult to say. All I know is that I was born with what I want to describe as like a magic power or a deep sensitivity for story and adventure, I suppose. I was always a bit of a drama queen, you could say, as well. So I sort of joined theatre groups very early, and it was really a spiritual home for me to be playing in that way, and I got a lot of enjoyment from it. But what I should say is there are two stories that maybe really sum up me as a child in that way. The first is that when I was 3 years old, I burst into my parents' bedroom and demanded that I learn to read right then. And I was holding the book Heidi, of all things, and I just said, I weed it, but I couldn't obviously read it at that moment. And it's been that fierce, is what I'm trying to say, that desire to read, to watch stories on film. It's more than a passion for me, it's probably an obsession. It's a way of life. So yeah. It's funny though, with writing, people always said, oh, you're going to be a writer, and I used to really resist that, and I think that's because I felt like that wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be the person who wrote the stories. I wanted to be the person who told them, and so for me that was distinct. I never wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a storyteller, a physical entity. I hope that makes sense.
What's the difference for that for you? Because for me, when I think of a storyteller, I think more maybe like an actor or someone who performs, rather than, I guess writers also hold more power because they navigate exactly where the story goes.
So I think I can use another story for this, I guess. I didn't know what a director was until I was 17 years old. And when I discovered what a director was, I instantly felt at home. I thought, this is the thing. This is the thing that I want to do. It's somewhere between acting. It's somewhere between writing. It comprises all the things that I love. And I get to go beyond the limits of my ability as a writer or a performer to make this story happen exactly as I feel it needs to happen. So when I encounter a story, whether it's my own or whether it's like directing some actors to tell a particular story, it could be a classic one or a new one, or when I'm working with a writer to help them get their story out, when it works for me, it feels like music. It's just like a perfect symphony, and I'm always chasing that feeling, and I know when I've got it. And so with writing, that takes a long time to get there, but with directing, when you're there watching the actors do it, you're like, there, that's the thing, and I love that feeling. So it's definitely a distinct process for me. but it's always that feeling, and I can only compare it to music, or at best having a drink of water when you've been thirsty for years or something when it lands.
And what moved you from studying culture and performance into writing and directing specifically? How did that evolve from, I mean, you kind of mentioned it a bit.
Well, I never really studied culture. I studied English literature at university to begin with, but that was only because I'd had a bereavement. My father died when I was 16, and so any dreams of heading to the big city — I did not grow up in the big city — any dreams of heading there died with him, because it wasn't going to be possible for me to take that leap, as I had responsibilities, because my sister is learning disabled and my mum needed me to be closer to home. So I went to study English literature. I abandoned my ambitions of potentially becoming an actor at that point, but it was fine because I discovered directing and preferred it like 100% more anyway. And so when I was studying at UEA, I loved, and I continue to love, like being an observer of stories or a consumer of stories, even if I'm not actively making them. And in terms of what I studied there, I use it every day. I'm probably the only person who uses their degree every day in their work. And I'm always making connections between things. But then almost within the first term of being there, I knew that to be an academic, for example, wasn't for me. And so I thought, even though I know I don't want to be an actor, and even though I know it's not possible at this moment for me to go to London, which is what I'd always wanted to do, I thought I'm just gonna look into RADA anyway. I was like a stalker of that place because it had always been my dream. And I found that master's in text and performance, and I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. That feels to me like the balance between the kind of literary side and the performance side. And I was right. It was one of the best years of my life. It was fantastic.
And how did that foundation guide the stories that you choose to tell now?
That's so funny. I don't know if it does, but I can tell you what I learned and what I hold to my heart from that experience. Mostly I just had a blast, honestly, because this is what I mean. Writers are having a conversation with themselves. For me, I'm just like an energy chaser. So when I'm doing anything within a group setting or with another person, or that is really where I feel most at home. And when I'm writing a script, I'm just always waiting for someone to like read it. That's what I want. But in terms of your question, like what did I gain from that? I had some really exceptional teachers, and I can tell you the two things that I hold dear still. The first was a Polish Greek director called Andrew Wisniewski, and I had to do like some intense scene studies with him into King Lear, and it was part acting. You did voice, you did Laban, you did all the things, but then you were looking at it from how do you make the performance come from the text, like what's the link between the two. And it was just really amazing to be in the room with someone like Andrew, because he used to always bring things back to recent history and context, which I loved, and he'd always say things about the text that I'd never really thought of before. So with King Lear, there's obviously quite the shocking moment, sorry for the spoiler, where Gloucester's eyes are removed with a spoon. And when you haven't read that play before and you have thoughts about Shakespeare, maybe you think, oh, it's just a bunch of poetry. And then you have something that, is basically X-rated on Netflix now, someone having their eyes removed with a spoon. I remember being really shocked by that and thinking I must have like misread or misunderstood it. And I remember Andrew saying to me, here's the thing, every human has the potential to do just that if pushed. And that really stayed with me at that point. I really thought, wow, every human has the potential. And then he followed it up with also every human has the potential to love as well. And I think that's something I knew intuitively, but to have it explained so clearly and patiently, that just really landed with me.
It's interesting because I was told the same thing through acting. It was, every person, human actor, is able to feel something and its opposite, which is really, it's really powerful when you think about it, because it depends on the situation, terms on the circumstances. If someone's pushed and the urgency's there, it's so fascinating to think like you shouldn't be able to judge what people do in that sense, especially when you're doing a character or when you're reading it specifically, because anyone could be in that situation.
Yeah, I suppose from that conversation with Andrew, I then went deeper into this idea of what a story's even for. And to do with King Lear, Mark Rylance, the actor, his mother, I think, was a psychiatric nurse, and my father was a psychiatric nurse. And he actually took his RSC company in the 90s or the late 80s to Broadmoor, which is a psychiatric facility where people have done really heinous things, like, you know, it wouldn't be out of the question to someone to have been in the audience who had done something as violent as remove eyes with a rusty spoon. But they performed those Hamlet, King Lear, and I forget the third play, with no costumes to patients who were considered beyond help. And what was very striking, and there's this incredible book that you can read afterwards about it, is about how they collected the responses of the patients after seeing these dramas, and what came up for them was totally different to how an audience would have, let's say an audience who hadn't murdered or brutalized someone. They had a very different response. So one of the things that came out was about, they very much sided with Goneril and Reagan. They definitely understood the spoon thing. But it was coming from a sense of, did you not notice that King Lear was always playing his children off against each other? Did you not think about how it's felt to be Goneril and Reagan for their entire lives, to then not be able to rule in their own terms? You know, I suppose it was pointing to the damage in some of the characters. One of the other things that came out was, it was very profound to hear, I think this must have been in Hamlet, the actors make a loud noise, because in Broadmoor, any loud noise was treated as a crisis, as a shutdown moment. But when you look into the backgrounds of the patients who were there, some of them had had such terrible things happen to them, and to not be allowed to scream suddenly felt very, very terrible, actually. How do you process a trauma like that? Anyway, I just suddenly thought, wow, I don't even know what the outcome of it was, more that it's, if you put it in front of a different audience, stories land differently. And then in my work now, I'm really interested in legitimizing story for what it is, which is an essential part of the human experience, but not a nice to have. And so, as you know, I'm very interested in story science. I'm very informed by the work of Will Storr and another neuroscientist about what part of the brain lights up the ancient wisdom of stories, but also why they exist at all. And as you know, because I've told you, Jurassic Park is a great example of this. Stories are always asking us, how do we survive? And so Jurassic Park is an amazing example. I love how we're swinging from King Lear to Hamlet to Jurassic Park. But it's the thing that you take away from Jurassic Park is that you're meant to stand still in front of a T-Rex. That's the learning. And every story, when it's working properly, that value, that tiny piece of value is there, but it runs through every part of your story. Yeah, so that was probably a bit waffly, sorry. But
No, not at all. I think also with the story science bit, I think, I think you're the only person that I've heard it from to really being like, look, these ingredients form a really great story, and having really understood. I mean, some people do it really naturally as some things, but having really dig deeper into, what makes a good story, what do the characters' wants and needs are, but how does that evolve, and the meet cute and all those kind of things. And it does, as you watch movies and you read different books, it all is very clear. So it's also, as an actor or writer, it's also really interesting to know it from that perspective, just so then you understand where their points of view are, and maybe they have different, emotions and different experiences that are happening in that moment. So whether you're an actor or a writer, it's I think it's quite a valuable tool to have, because actually I think it makes your performance even better.
I think linking to what is the central value of story, it's both a direction and it's also very freeing, because if you know that your story has to speak to someone in a life or death way, but life and death can be a spiritual matter nowadays, But if you know your story's got to speak to that, you can actually be very nuanced about what that is. So as you know, another film I like to mention a lot is Whiplash. You know, how can a film about jazz drumming, arguably a non-essential skill, make you sweat? How can it touch the audiences so they have to cover their hands? You know, that level of obsession. You can go really nuanced when you understand story science. And people often like to talk about The Hero's Journey and Joseph Campbell, which I do find valuable. But I find the way that story science, like that story principle of how to tell a story, you know, it's not organized in a way that allows for you to make truly intuitive choices, right? And it's too much of a framework. Whereas what I seek to create is something more like a heartbeat in a hospital, where it's about brains registering change or what's going to keep people hooked. It's that energy thing again. If you think about the life force of a heartbeat, that for me is what this is all about. So, you know, I'm monomaniacal in how I see energy, I suppose.
No, definitely. And I think, as you said, you know, gone from writing to directing. So how has moving from those roles also altered your creative vision? Or, you know, have, after being directing, has that then altered or shaped the way that you then write stories as well?
So I feel like directing is what I was put on the planet to do, and it's where I feel most at home and most happy. And somewhere between second and third place goes writing and teaching work. With writing, though, it is a totally different skill in some ways, insofar that when I can access the spontaneity, the deep connection with my own mind and instincts, writing is easy. But then there's a craft to writing that you have to learn, and a patience. So say if I was directing something for theatre, I know that, you know, in a week we could pull some long days and we'd get there because of that ball of energy we're all passing around. It's almost like, you know, everyone's making it better, and it's gonna be done by the end, and it's quite thrilling to work that hard. With writing, it's slow and it's all on your shoulders. You have to bring the energy, the voice, the perspective of so many different people. And I found that I was very critical as a writer. After my first written piece, I was very critical. And if I'm totally honest, I turned to writing, you know, to kind of help me capture that feeling of directing when that wasn't financially possible, or when I was in between jobs or opportunities. And I underestimated what writing was about. And what I would say writing has given me is deep patience, which I would say before I started writing, I had basically zero. zero track record of being a patient person. And trust is kind of like trusting the process and trusting that things are messy and uneven. As a director, I think I love the control. I love nurturing people, and I love the control of getting to the polished thing. But with writing, it's slower, it's harder, and sometimes, a lot of the time, it's less fun. But it's spiritually so valuable, and you discover things about yourself that you just didn't know, and you create characters who start to, when you enter that place of deep patience, whisper to you, grow with you. It's like a whisper as opposed to a shout.
And I guess also when it comes to writing, like, you know, I feel like it's a bit more vulnerable as well, because, you know, some people aren't going to like it. And not that you should think about these things when you're writing anyway. I think you should be as free as you want to be and can be, and be as vulnerable as you can. But I think it is a bit scary from thinking, oh no, are people going to like it? Is it going to be crap? Because there's not much that you can do to save a bad script. I mean, actors and directors can save a bad script, but ultimately, if a bad script is bad, it's bad.
I mean, it is very vulnerable. And that's the other thing, though, you have to let it be shit. You have to actually let it be crap. That's quite difficult. That was a very difficult part for me. And I find that now, I obviously work with writers a lot, I find that some people can really blast through their first finished piece, and it's the second piece where they really encounter their own fragility, because sometimes the first piece comes out as kind of a primal raw, it's something they want to say or they've been building on, studying or holding on to their entire lives, and so they just are fully in tune with that instinct and it all comes out. But then the second time they're like, how did I do that? How did I do that? But it doesn't matter if it comes the first time or the second time, it is about patience. It's a bit like going to the gym. You've just got to keep showing up, and in the end you will get there and you will be grateful for it. But there's a lot of unrewarding moments, but they are part of the process. And I've talked to you about how when you're writing at first, sometimes you have to pan for gold, which is what they used to do in America, where people were looking for gold, but they had to get loads of mud in basically sieves. And most of the sieves were just mud, but then occasionally you'd get this tiny bit of gold. And when you find that tiny bit of gold, it feels so wonderful. But when you think about the amount of mud you've got to sieve through to get there, it's depressing. And so you've got to understand that you don't get the gold without the mud. Yeah. And you've got to make the mud enjoyable and sustainable.
Well, yeah, because the more you do it, the more you kind of learn. And I think it also makes your work better ultimately.
Yes, it doesn't have to be punishing, but it can feel like it.
Well, yeah, especially when you're turning out 50 drafts of the same thing, but necessary. Many of your work that I've seen has tackled power, identity, and ambition as well, especially what you showed us yesterday. What draws you to those themes, and how do you make sure that emotional truth also remains at the center of them?
It's interesting. I've been trying to think about this recently because my husband Daniel said, "What do you think is the story that you tell in every piece?" Because Simon Stevens, the playwright, says you always end up telling a story, and I think his is like believe the children. That's the story he thinks he's always telling. I'd have to reread his work to see, why it's that. With mine, I'm still struggling to find a through line, but what I would say is I am very interested in ambition. I am interested in drive. And again, you could say that links back to my enjoyment of energy. I like people who are high performers. I like people who are dedicated. And I also understand the cost of that. And I think sometimes I'm not a normal person and I have zero balance. And sometimes I think that's fucking great. And other times I think that's a disaster and I need to, do more yoga. And I think that's maybe the thing I'm trying to figure out is should you go as fast as you can, like pedal down, or should you be seeking balance in life? And I honestly think that for me, I need to go pedal down and then have nothing. And life doesn't work like that. But I think that's how I naturally would be. So I guess when I'm thinking about characters, I'm drawn to characters who have a hunger and a drive for something, and often they have to get there no matter what, even if it makes no sense to other people. But I also would say that within the work there's always moments of emotional truth and vulnerability, because despite the fact I can write people who are kind of playing with power and ambition, I'm also someone who doesn't really I'm not that conniving. I wish I was. I have to work quite hard on the script to be, I could say that and actually it could be like a ruse for being the most conniving person on earth, right? But actually I take people at face value a lot of the time, or I have done, and have come a cropper to that. But I suppose what I'm saying is I like to connect with people too. I can be going very fast, but I often want to reach my hand out the car and pull them along for the ride. And I'm really happy to spend time with people who are oddballs, who don't fit in. In fact, conformity is probably the thing that offends me most. So
otherwise the world would be boring and we would have no interesting stories.
For me, being boring is probably the biggest crime. So, but that means I also give people who I like, I suppose let's go back to my sister. My sister is learning disabled, and She was adopted into our family at 4. And as a result of that, I have many, many friends and associates who are learning disabled people, right? But I love the perspective that can come from them, because they live a very different life to me, and they force me to be slower in my conversation and in what I talk about, and it's all about connection, and I love that too, you know. So sometimes slowing down for the right people to have a really meaningful conversation, that's what life's about too.
And not fast forward. I should take a leaf out of your book in that sense.
Yeah. Making time for people is important as well, right? So I suppose I struggle with that. Sometimes I want to go really fast, but I also want to have conversations with interesting people, and they can show up in all walks of life.
Definitely. And you also focus quite a lot on class and class division.
You think?
I think you do. I think you mention it quite a lot, especially in some of the pieces you've shown me as well. Why do you think that's also quite important in, you know, especially the current climate in the UK especially?
Well, I suppose that's a good question. So I was raised middle class, and that was something that my family worked hard to achieve. I would say my mother came from a middle class background in the Highlands of Scotland. Like, the family had cafes, things like that, whereas my dad was kind of from the underclass, the not even working class, the just kind of Angela's Ashes class. So he was born and to my grandmother, and she was unmarried, and she already had a son by someone else to whom she wasn't married, in the 40s. And I think it was a real struggle. It was a real struggle. And I know that she was very super bright, and but didn't have access to like educational opportunities, and as a woman was probably dismissed as well. And she spent a lot of her life, and I have so many of these fragments, like basically writing poetry, stories on the back of unpaid bills. And her 2 sons went to the local grammar and then sort of entered the middle class. And she was very proud of that, but also very frustrated for herself. And so if class comes into it, maybe it's less about class and maybe more about potential.
Mm-hmm.
I've got children now myself, and I don't need my children to achieve or prove anything to me, but I want them to have the opportunity to discover what their role in the world is, and not be limited by what that should be because of education, gender, or you know, lack of opportunity. And I really do, sometimes I think about my grandmother a lot, and you know, she actually wrote this very, very powerful thing on the back of some kind of gas bill, just saying, I know I'm not illiterate because I'm writing this. And it just broke my heart, because she's absolutely not illiterate. She's got such deep soul and an artist's soul, and it just obviously couldn't find its expression. And I think that affected her and hurt her. Does that make sense?
Completely, yeah.
I hate that for anyone. Gender irrelevant, class irrelevant. So if you're a millionaire and you want to go and do something totally ridiculous, go on. If that's your thing, if you want to go and clean windows because you enjoy that, do it. I just really want people to have opportunities to discover who they are and find their place. So it's less about class and it's more about potential and opportunity.
But I think it also shows you, you know, as you said, writing stories at the back of unpaid like gas bills or different bills that we all hate getting.
Yeah.
But I think it just shows also the drive and the need to be creative.
Absolutely.
Is like maybe even as a form of escapism from where you are. I think it sometimes is a survival tool in itself. It helps humanity work through all the horribleness that we're going through, or even express it in a different way. Or, I mean, for me, it's been very therapeutic as well. So I think it just, you know, just hearing stuff like that, I don't know, it's just, it gives me some hope in the sense of how powerful art and creativity is.
Yes, but it must, for me, absolutely it is. But I don't want anyone to feel like it's not for them.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah.
You can, you can, it's about being in your groove, whatever that is. So, for example, someone could write something truly awful, but if it works for them, that's great. But also, if they want to take it to the next stage, let them, and don't decide based on where they start, where they might end up, or what they're capable of. And sometimes you have to move mediums a little bit to discover your voice, but a curiosity is innate to humans and should be encouraged. The thing that upsets me most is people now say that I'm not creative, or I don't have a creative bone in my body. How do you do that? And you're like, wow, you've really disconnected from yourself. I mean, there's so much, again, science to show that creativity is the reason humans became the dominant species, and it's quite concerning that the arts are being removed, because now with the rise of AI, the way that the brain works means that is exactly the skill we all need right now to thrive as humans, to be a different species to AI, to provide value, but we're all out of practice because it's been devalued as something fluffy. And likewise, I feel sad that my grandmother didn't feel like she was allowed entry when she was more prolific than me, I would say, in her own like artistic endeavors, but she had this kind of sense of shame that she wasn't meant to. So I think it's about creativity for all, at whatever level you want to pursue it at, but also that, you know, mastery can be different things for different people. We can use yoga again here, where people say, you know, don't judge yourself by what others are doing, judge yourself between where you are on the mat and how it feels. Having that patience again, that the growth journey is the thing. So I don't put any limits, for example, on what the people I coach can achieve, ever. And I think that by removing limits, but also not feeding anyone lies about, you know, oh, you'll make $1 million, and it won't be like that. But by removing limits and treating everyone as a professional and pushing them, that is how people achieve things that they didn't even know they were capable of, that I didn't know they were capable of. And that is very beautiful for me. One of my clients, Christine, she has been slogging away at this piece of work for many years, and the other day she brought in the opening of her piece, and she's nailed it, and I cried. It was so beautiful.
I'm really looking forward to reading that.
Yeah, it's the work, it's the work that went in, and she's found it, and now I know what she doesn't, which is it's so much more enjoyable from here, and it was worth it. And so it was very moving to finally hear her true voice as well, you know, to say the things she really wanted to say. And it's just so compelling when you reach that stage.
And as you mentioned, you're a creative coach, so obviously helping writers like myself with a lot of external performances, or turning ideas into external performances. So what's the key mind shift you encourage for someone who's also stuck at the start of a story? I think, or you mentioned it slightly in that, but as we mentioned as well, it takes a lot of drafting, redrafting.
So so someone who's right at the beginning, and how much have they written? Have they just like the blank pages before them, or they've written a page and they thought
Has an idea and can't put it down?
Okay, so the thing is like it's going to feel massive. So if you want to look back and say, I did that, I showed up for myself, or I had a go, even if you give up, I think the best thing to do is to think, what is the most urgent part of the story for you? Don't worry if it's at the beginning or the end, if you don't know where it is. It could even be how someone looks. You could see it like a moment from a film, or you could just be like, I just know they're wearing a blue hat. something that's just landing really, really clearly for you. Write that, just get it down, and realize that you will run out of steam, but get it down and just go for it. But there's also a view, which I know writers, you know, early stage writers are told, which is don't stop until you finish an entire draft. Just write anything. It's called pantsing. And I don't agree with that either. I think, again, goes back to what I keep saying, it's about following the energy. When you have an idea really clearly in your mind and you feel it's almost like denying yourself to wait until it chronologically shows up in the story, you should write what you feel and see most clearly. And then you might need to go back under the bonnet into the engine to be like, okay, right, so I have this moment where she's on a train or he's on a train, and then what's the significance of being on a train? Where are they going, or are they coming back from something? Or, and then you think, what's the story engine? What's the most interesting option here? And then you start building it, and maybe you play with some ideas for a while, and then you go back into the story. But just write the thing that's most urgent for you, and don't censor it, and don't feel like you need to finish it. Just get that out and down, and then you might need to sit with it for a while.
Yeah, as we all know, it all takes so much time. But I think by the end of you actually, I always sometimes feel sharing is also very, I don't know, it's like, especially because a lot of stuff that I write is stuff that I've experienced or gone through, or, human rights things that are happening. So it always feels like a part of me has gone with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that sense, it's taking a piece of you and it carrying through a different perspective as well. Obviously, that's not what everyone needs to do, because some people would do it through a different light. But what would your advice be to someone who's, for example, using past experiences in a script or something that they're working on?
Well, the first thing to say is if it's first of all, get a therapist. Always do that. And actually, it'll only be safe, but it'll only improve your writing. It might slow you down at first, but it'll only improve your writing, because, like I say, writing real stuff, whatever that means, or writing totally honestly and messily, is communion with the self, and it helps you to understand what you're going to do differently, or to accept parts of yourself that you can't change. And the deeper you know yourself, the more compassion you can offer to other people, and the better characters that you build. Because if you've been dumped and it's been horrendous, then maybe you have an understanding, a taste of what grief can be like, and you can use your imagination to expand the rest. But if you're writing something that has literally happened, there's a few things I would say. Let's say the story that you're writing, it's the kind of thing where people go, you've got to write that down, it's got to be in a novel somewhere. It's almost like a fully formed thing. Then I would say with that, you should write it as it is, and don't censor yourself. Just get it down in any shape or form. That is the one where I'd say pants it, because you're not having to think about what's going to happen. You're just going to report what you know to be true. And then you need to think, when you get to the end of that, is this the story I want to tell? Am I really bringing people into the experience or not? Okay, so let's imagine that you've written this down, maybe not a whole novel, but you've written the idea, or you've splurged bits and pieces of your soul, and then you think, is that it? Can people understand where I'm coming from? So for example, with something like narcissistic abuse, where it's invisible and you have to be in the moment, if you took narcissistic abuse, it would be very difficult for people to understand that unless they were fully in the shoes of the character who's experiencing it. And so then maybe you need to change your lens a little bit, or you need to use your imagination or play with the facts to tell the real truth. And that's when I think it gets interesting. That's when I think fiction can really free you up. And I feel like I don't write about myself. I do, obviously, I do. But I would hope that the parts of myself that are in my stories are actually so fragmented and unrecognizable, because I want to have fun with it. I want to say the truth I know about humanity, but I don't want to be the human at the end. That's my personal preference, but that means I can go anywhere and do anything and say things without feeling under the spotlight. And sometimes the characters that resemble me most, same age, same gender, they aren't the people I'm actually giving my truth to at all.
Because it might be the characters, or
it might be the one you don't expect. And so that can be interesting. I like to It's like taking a mirror of the self and smashing it and then deliberately letting the fragments go into different characters. I would say that can be a really fun thing to do. And if your story is stalling and you're not happy with it and it's very close to your heart, that can be a very powerful thing to do, is to be like, well, how do I? That's where someone like I can come in, though, because you maybe need some support to see the potential and to also open your mind to letting go of what literally happened to tell a better story, a more truthful story in some ways, because it's actually connecting you in with the experience.
Because as also we all know, truth is what connects readers or viewers to a story. So it's ensuring that the truth that you think you might put into the story might not actually be the truth that is coming out and showing, or you might need to dig a lot deeper to actually get to the core that actually touches people's hearts and minds and souls and makes them think in different ways.
I mean, it's not about saying, oh, don't write a rant. Please go ahead, enjoy it, write a rant. You maybe need to write a rant. But maybe the rant that you want to write is not the way that's going to give your readers who are coming into this cold the truth. They're just being met with your anger. So even if your anger is totally justified, they maybe don't understand how you got that angry, how the character got that angry, and you need to bring them into the betrayal. So then it's like, what does betrayal feel like? I mean, an exercise I think I've used with you before is like how to spot a liar. And the thing is you think, oh, I'll write this liar and they'll come in and they'll be revealing, they'll be saying nasty things, they'll be side-eye. No, that's not true. Most liars, most people who betray you, or who the ones who, you know, you feel most stung after the encounter or relationship has ended, or friendship, are people who you really trusted. You really trusted. Liars are usually people you've loved.
Yeah, and it hurts a lot deeper as well.
Yeah, so you need to bring the person into the love, actually. And if you're writing your real life and you're like, you've lost sight of that love, that can, or affection or respect, then that can be an interesting journey. And that's why I say get a therapist, because
yeah, much needed. But no, also from, as we mentioned, you writing and then directing, what are some of the misconceptions writers might have when they move into directing their own work? Because I feel like individuals are doing that more and more nowadays. So how do you think they can bridge that gap?
I cannot imagine doing it that way round. So I can only, this might not be totally useful advice, but I shall have a go. I'm going to think about my own experience in reverse. Some writers like writing or prefer it, or it's their medium of choice because they are allowed to sit with themselves and it's just all about their opinion. They have total control once it's up and running. Like I say, they like that responsibility and that autonomy and that authority. When you then start working with actors, you've got a whole other, or other people even, you've got it's a whole different ball game. It's about learning what you're going to, where you need to meet in the middle and give people ownership over their role and what you need to release, or being open to the perspective that other people bring, even if it's not your own. So active listening is one thing, but then also understanding, well, what is the value in my project? What is the thing I really want to say? And understanding that you can't give that away. So sometimes I say directing is really best idea wins, and I have the power of veto. It's like I choose what the best idea is, but it doesn't have to be mine. And also when you're working with actors, they might be able to access what you're trying to do, and they might intellectually understand that and want to get there for you. But to do that is sometimes like for them, like, you know, jumping from a very tall building in New York to the other one. It's like they could fall in the middle and it could be horrendous. So they need you to build a bridge. They need you to almost be the thing that lays across it and gives them the faith in themselves. They almost feel like they need to walk on water sometimes, and they can get very in their heads about that, despite wanting the same outcome as you. And then it's about how do we build you to get to the point where you can deliver this thing. That is totally different to writing, and you can't get frustrated. You've got to work with people, you've got to find the key, you've got to find the solution. And also it's just a lot. It can, and also then if you've miscast, or if you're working with someone who you thought was a great fit and then isn't, that's a lot of emotional baggage that you have to carry, and it becomes a bit like being an HR or a manager. You know, it's a lot of things like that. You don't always get it right either, and that then people are there giving you feedback live, and that's not much fun.
Yeah, that always happens on some sets, doesn't it? I want to ask you a really big hypothetical question. So
Okay.
imagine if you had no budget, no restrictions, and full creative freedom. What story would you want to tell? And what would the protagonist be? And what would the story be?
Oh, that's a good question. So I've got a few things that I would do, but it would definitely be film or TV. Definitely be screen. I'm very drawn to history. That's what I love, and I want that. History is very expensive, so I would want something in that space that was just absolutely no expense spared, but then has this incredible script and didn't need to make money at the other end. So yeah, that can be a difficult one with commissioners and producers, but that's what really turns me on. That's my favorite thing. That's the thing I always really wanted to do. But
what period of history?
Oh God, anything. But I love the Victorians. That's what I'm thinking about at the moment. I want to write something which is half sci-fi, half Victorian. But I want no expenses spared, you see.
That's such an interesting combination.
So it would be a super expensive thing, but sometimes you've got to write the super expensive thing. But if I'm totally honest, what would I if I had no budget restrictions and full creative freedom? There are projects that I've been working on for a long time, nurturing and pushing. I would have to let those go first. I would have to, because I've got this secret saying, and it's not a well-written saying, it's not natty, but it's all my children must live. Which means everything I write must have some kind of a life, however small. So it's all my children must live, however small. And so I've got a few other kids who need their moment in the spotlight first. So maybe I'd just focus on producing them rather than writing something new, because, you know, I'm in it for the long term with everything that I write, everything that I craft.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's always difficult to let go of one of your pieces.
Oh, I never let go, as if.
Right.
I never stop believing. But I'm also not deluded. So, you know, I see value in everything that I've done that's got to a certain stage. And I'm quite slow, I would say. I'm not prolific, I'm quite slow. And so by the time the script is written and I'm happy with it, it is a person. It becomes something that's separate to me, and I can advocate for it like it's nothing to do with me. It's bizarre. So yeah, I'd probably fund those things.
Yeah, well, I've also realized that sometimes it's just not the right moment for what you've written in that moment. It might be later on, which I find really frustrating, because I'm a very much a go, want to get it done type person. So I've learned to, you know, maybe pull it back, work on something else. The moment will come for that. Maybe later on, maybe I'll revisit it.
I would say that nothing I've ever made or produced has really had incredible buy-in from the start. Now, that could be because I am terrible at pitching, but I actually think it's because, like, take the scene we looked at yesterday. I could have done something simpler, but I don't want to.
I loved what you did with it. I honestly read it and I was like,
it was hard. It's taken me a long time to get there, but I'm proud of it now. I'm like, yeah, this is the right track. It wasn't perfect, but it's on the right track. And so, yeah, I have to almost write it, do it, have it performed before I sell things. And that has been the way it has been with my career, is that I haven't had someone come down and bestow great opportunities on me. I've made them, I've put my money where my mouth is, I've backed myself, and then other opportunities have come from that work. So I mean, I like saying that as well, because sometimes people think they've got to be anointed, and what if we say you don't have to be, but maybe you do have to be a bit mad. Everyone's mad here. You know, you do have to back yourself, and you do have to sometimes invest part of your own money, but you know, you do so with a you know, like I would never actually advise anyone to self-publish, for example, but if you can make something small, cut your cloth and make it the thing that you want, that is so meaningful for your life. You don't need to, you know, you shouldn't be pretending like you're being published by Penguin when you're not. But it's like, could you make something truly amazing on Substack? Could you take time enjoying putting together the visuals for like that online magazine, for example? Is there a different way around this to make all your children live, all your babies must live? Is there a way to make this a portfolio project where you can take pieces off here and pieces off there and give it the little moments of oxygen? That for me is how I have survived this long, and that's probably how everything I do is really for my art or my children, my actual physical children. I've got to, so you know, but I can't just turn this part off, you know, so it's got to be given oxygen.
But also what I've learned is the fact that, you know, once you've written and maybe it could be an amazing piece, it doesn't stop there, because then you have to pitch, as you mentioned. And I think that one of the things that you've really taught me is nailing that elevator pitch, nailing your log line and your synopsis to be just impeccable. Because otherwise no one's going to show interest in, because it's something that you're really passionate about, but other people might not see the importance of it.
Yeah, I now have had to try and make that part of my creative process, and I have found that it's valuable practicing what is this, and sometimes that can get really stuck in your throat when you're in the development moment. It's better to say it's this and get it wrong, and evolve. It's allowed to evolve as well, you know, it's allowed to change, but there's something about articulating this is what this is that allows you to go, oh, that wasn't right, and then you think, well, what is it then? You know, anything you can do to get the creative process out of yourself and to verbalize it. You could be your own sounding board when you do that, and yeah, it does make it easier at the end to sell the idea. But you know what, sometimes you've just got to show people, because people maybe don't have the vision, or commissioners are frightened because, you know, it's massive amounts of money to make things, and also, like I say, society does not see value in things in being made as such, which is why in my kind of next spin of the wheel, I really I'm setting up a company called Artists Anonymous, which is kind of drawing my artistic work and my coaching work together, but also expanding that into businesses to help people who are struggling with ideation or pitching or storytelling, or, you know, some people can't even hold eye contact, to be honest, or like have a conversation. I really feel like artists have these, what they call soft skills, in spades, or certainly actors do, or people in our kind of community do. Why not hire that person one day a week and pay them a decent wage for that, and just look how they can work with people in your business? I think that's something that's become a much more urgent problem for me as I've got older, is that I refuse to think that this isn't valuable. I refuse. And if it's about making it something where it speaks to the bottom line, then let's go. Because it was when I had my children, I suddenly realized, oh, there really isn't anything for me to keep going. And that is madness. But I think that what I'm offering is very valuable. And I've proved that time and time again. So maybe it's about just not me changing my mind or selling out, but encouraging businesses to buy in. So.
But it does suck how we have to ourselves reframe that point of view in order to, you know, make sure that we have a way that we can get paid for the work that we do as well.
I think I'm not even bothered about being paid. It's about having a quality of life, to have a family, to have safety, to be able to give back. I also think artists should be playing a more social role, but right now they're not really able to play any role. And I've been in moments of Scrabble and the juggle that's been too much, whereas that's not the best use of my skills, and that's not the way I can make a really important contribution to the world. You know, I like to think that I make people happy and I give them confidence. Like, I'm working with someone at the moment who is, you know, out there now pitching for business, and he was really stressed, and now he feels he's got a wingman and he's got a strategy and he's got like a spring in his step, because he knows that he's going to get better. It's just like that, using those directorial skills I've had and that ability to help people tell stories has actually like made a really big impact on that guy. I mean, there's many more like that, but I don't think I'm the only one who can do this. So maybe it's about just looking a bit differently about what we value in society. And I think, in a funny way, I think AI will heighten this even more. It's not really a problem. Let it write its slop, off it goes. It's the energy thing I'm talking about. Maybe it's time for me to rule the world. No, maybe it's time for people who have great energy to rule the world.
I think that's a really nice way to end. So thank you so much, Melanie. I've really enjoyed getting to, like, obviously because I've spent a lot of time talking to you about things, but really digging deeper into some specific topics as well.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my grandma.
Always love listening to people's stories.